and we will read few verses from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, glorifying Advaita Acharya, and then speak a little bit about his glories, because to describe his glories is not possible completely. So we will read first two verses from Svarup Damodar Goswami Kadacha, where he describes the tattva of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. These are the fourth and the fifth verses from the 6th chapter of Adilila Chaitanya Charitamrita. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. So verse number 4. Mahavishnur Jagat Karta Mahavishnur Jagat Karta Mayaya Yaksrijatyadaha Mayaya Yaksrijatyadaha Tasyavatara evayam Tasyavatara evayam Advaitacharya Ishvaraha Advaitacharya Ishvaraha. So translation of this verse. Lord Advaita Acharya is the incarnation of Mahavishnu, whose main function is to create the cosmic worlds through the action of Maya. And then the next verse. Advaitam Harinadvaitat Advaitam Harinadvaitat Acharyam Bhakti Samsanat Acharyam Bhakti Samsanat Bhaktavataram Isham Tam Bhaktavataram Isham Tam Advaitacharyam Ashraye Advaitacharyam Ashraye. Translation. Because he is non-different from Hari, the Supreme Lord, he is called Advaita. And because he propagates the cult of devotion, he is called Acharya. He is the Lord and the incarnation of Lord's devotee. Therefore, I take shelter of him. And then I read two more verses from the same chapter of Chaitanya Charitamrita, 12 and 28, which very beautifully explain these verses from Svarup Damodar Kadacha. Jagat Mangala Advaita, Jagat Guna Dhama, Mangala Charitra Sada, Mangala Yandra Nama. Sri Advaita Acharya is all auspicious to the world. He is the reservoir of all auspicious attributes. His characteristics, activities, and name are always auspicious. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Sri Advaita Prabhu, who is an incarnation of Mahavishnu, is an Acharya or teacher. All his activities and all other activities of Vishnu are auspicious. Anyone who can view the all auspiciousness in the pastimes of Lord Vishnu also becomes auspicious simultaneously. Therefore, since Lord Vishnu is the fountainhead of auspiciousness. Anyone who is attracted by the devotional service of Lord Vishnu can render the greatest service to human society. Rejected persons in the material world who refuse to understand pure devotional service as eternal function of the living entities, as actual liberation of the living being from conditioned life, become bereft of all devotional service because of their poor fund of knowledge. In the teachings of Advaita Prabhu, there is no question of fruitive activities or impersonal liberation. Bewildered by the spell of material energy, however, persons who could not understand that Advaita Prabhu is non-different from Vishnu wanted to follow him in their impersonal conceptions. The attempt of Advaita Prabhu to punish them is also auspicious. Lord Vishnu and his activities can bestow all good fortune directly and indirectly. In other words, being favored by Lord Vishnu and being punished by Lord Vishnu are one and the same, because all activities of Vishnu are absolute. According to some, Mangala is another name of Advaita Prabhu, as the causal incarnation of Lord Vishnu's or Lord Vishnu's incarnation for particular occasion. He is the supply agent or ingredient in material nature. However, he is never to be considered material. All his activities are spiritual. Anyone who hears about and glorifies him becomes glorified himself for such activities, free one from all kinds of misfortune. One should not invest any material contamination or impersonalism in the Vishnu form. Everyone should try to understand the real identity of Lord Vishnu. By such knowledge, one can attain the highest stage of perfection. And one more verse and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Text number 28. Jivanistarila Krishna Bhakti Koridan Gita Bhagavate Koila Bhaktira Vyakyan. He delivered all living beings by offering the gift of Krishna Bhakti. He explained Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam in the light of devotional service. Purport. Although Sri Advaita Prabhu is an incarnation of Vishnu for the welfare of conditioned souls, he manifested himself as a servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and throughout all his activities he showed himself to be an eternal servitor. Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda also manifested the same principle, although they belong to the category of Vishnu. If Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, and Advaita Prabhu had exhibited their all-powerful Vishnu potencies within this material world, people would have become greater impersonalists, monists, and self-worshippers than they had already become under the spell of this age. Therefore, the personality of Godhead and his different incarnations and forms played the parts of devotees to instruct the conditioned souls how to approach the transcendental stage of devotional service. Advaita Acharya especially intended to teach the conditioned souls about devotional service. The word Acharya means teacher. The special function of such teacher is to make people Krishna conscious. A bona fide teacher following the footsteps of Advaita Acharya has no other business than to spread the principles of Krishna consciousness all over the world. The real qualification of an Acharya is that he presents himself as a servant of the Supreme. Such a bona fide Acharya can never support the demoniac activities of atheistic men who present themselves as God. It is the main business of an Acharya to defy such impostors posing as God before the innocent public. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vanchakalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhyeva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Ajanulambita Bhujao Kanakavadatu Sankirtanai Kapitaro Kamalaya Daksha Vishwambaro Dvijavaro Yugadharma Palu Vande Jagat Priya Karo Karunavatar Yandah Pravishya Mamavachi Mamam Prasuptam Sanjeevaya Takila Shakti Darak Swadhamna Anyamscha Hasta Charana Shravana Atva Pranannamo Bhagavate Purushaya Trubhya. Hare Krishna. So today we are fortunate enough to try to glorify Advaita Acharya Prabhu. And as Prabhupada said in the first purport which we read, whoever glorifies Advaita Acharya Prabhu, especially on this day, he becomes glorious himself because he purifies his heart from all contamination. That's the purpose of our glorification. Naturally, people, they're inclined to blaspheme others. There is very strong fault-finding tendency in every one of us. Because we're self-centered by nature. We always want to put ourselves in the center, and therefore we need to blaspheme others, we need to do some ninda towards others and say that, I'm better than them. But when we start glorifying somebody, this is the contamination. This is something which actually, this is the dirt in our heart. This tendency is the main dirt in our heart. How to get rid of this tendency? There is only one way to get rid of this tendency. How to get rid of this dirt or of this contamination within our heart? There is only one way to do it, is to glorify. It means that we put ourselves somewhere else and we put somebody whom we glorify in the center. And especially if we glorify Lord Chaitanya and his associates, then it's a very purifying process. If we do it sincerely, with the desire to glorify them and to purify us from all these material tendencies, which are very, very strong. So we have these occasions when we can fully, without any limitations, to glorify the associates of Lord Chaitanya, and we should take full advantage of these occasions. Whenever we have this opportunity to glorify, we should try to do it, trying to understand how insignificant we actually are and how great they are, what they are doing, and what are we in comparison with them, and how they are coming here to this world to deliver the conditioned souls. Srila Prabhupada very beautifully and very aptly describes in the second purport why Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and all his associates came and played the role, even those associates who are in the category of Vishnu Tattva, Advaita Acharya Nityananda Prabhu and Lord Chaitanya himself, they belong to Vishnu Tattva category. They are in the category of God. But they never wanted to be glorified as God, and they didn't display so freely their powers of Godhood. They had a pleasure to play a role of a servant of God. even though they're Ishvaras. As it is said in the verses which we read, 2 times Swarup Damodar Goswami says, Advaita Acharya is Ishvara, he's God. He's God himself. Still, nevertheless, he plays the role of a servant of God because, as Prabhupada says, in Kali Yuga, if somebody has little mystic power, not much mystic power, some little ashes he can create. Not the whole universe, but little ashes. So people, foolish people of Kali Yuga starts glorifying him as God. What kind of God he is, He produces some ashes. What is the use? Of course, this is very holy ashes. But give some watches, Swiss watches. That's that's a very powerful manifestation of godliness. But that's a problem in Kali Yuga, because people they already have this tendency, I'm God. And if somebody manifests little power, they glorify him as God with the desire to become God themselves. All this cheap glorification of somebody as God in Kali Yuga ultimately has the underlying tendency, the background, why people are so easily prey to this. Because they want to be God themselves. They don't want to glorify somebody as God without the prospect to become God themselves. If somebody in a very easygoing way says, I'm God, and they say, oh yeah, this is good, I'm also God. And especially if he preaches this thing. Therefore, God himself comes to Kali Yuga, but he comes as Chana Avatar. Chana Avatar means he doesn't never display. He doesn't want to display. He doesn't want to teach that he is God. He wants to teach our real function. In the previous ages, God could freely come as God. There was no this danger that his incarnation would be misinterpreted. Because people had more stronger tendency for service in the previous ages. They would understand, yeah, this is the real God. This is the Lord, and I am his servant. Here in Kali Yuga, if somebody comes and says, I'm God, everyone says, yes, very good, I'm also God. Congratulations. Yeah, very good. So that's why Lord Chaitanya comes and he brings with him Advaita Acharya and Nityananda Prabhu for this very purpose. They God, but they show by their behavior that position of a servant is even higher than position of God. Position of the real servant of God is more glorified in the eyes of God himself than his own position. And therefore, Lord Chaitanya glorifies Lord Nityananda and Advaita Acharya. And they are in this competition, who is serving better. So we have to really understand, first of all, their tattva. While glorifying anyone who is a part of the entourage of Lord Chaitanya, we first of all have to very clearly understand their tattva, and then to understand how this tattva manifests while they're playing the role of a devotee. Because that's also very interesting and very important for us to understand how this tattva, their nature, their real nature, manifests in their pastimes when they're displaying this devotional service, and what they teach by their leelas, by their behavior. The lessons which Advaita Acharya is giving to us are very, very grave and very important. And we will be greatly benefited if we at least touch a little bit of the lessons which Advaita Acharya came to teach us. So, Lord Chaitanya in the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, Srila Prabhupada writes that Lord Chaitanya is never alone. We never see, Srila Prabhupada even writes that we never see the picture of Lord Chaitanya alone. There is one picture of Lord Chaitanya. He is dancing and he is very prominent. When you first look at this picture, you have an impression as if he is alone. But if you see in some distance, there is very small devotees there. So even in this picture, he is always surrounded by his devotees. He came for this purpose to show that he doesn't like to be glorified alone also. When we want to glorify Lord Chaitanya, we have to really understand his inner desire. He is more pleased when we glorify his associates. He came with his Anga and Upanga and with his Astra and with his Parshads. This is the glorification of the incarnation of the Kali Yuga. Yagyai Sankirtana Praya Yajantihi Sumedhasa Krishna Varnam Tvisha Krishnam Sangapangastra Parshadam. This glorious verse from the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam explains the nature of the incarnation of this age. Lord Chaitanya is not coming alone. He is coming with all his associates because, again, this is the nature of Kali Yuga. In Kali Yuga, it is said that Kalo Sangha Shakta. Shakti in Kali Yuga is in the assemblies of devotees. In the assemblies, not necessarily devotees. In Kali Yuga, one person cannot do anything. And even the Lord himself comes and he says, even I cannot do anything alone in this Kali Yuga. I need to bring so many Anga, Upanga and Parshad together with me. Only all together we will be able to accomplish this mission. And therefore Srila Prabhupada, he again and again stresses the society of devotees. He said in one purport in the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam that if one thinks that he can become Krishna conscious alone, he is delirious. He's just a madman. If he thinks that he can become Krishna conscious without the society of devotees, it's ridiculous. It's not possible. We need the society to be supported by this society, to be nourished by this society, to be, encouraged by the society of devotees. That's why ISKCON is created. And even the Lord himself, he came, and he is the original founder of ISKCON. Of International Society for Krishna Consciousness, because this is the purpose of his incarnation. He came, and he came together with all his devotees. And Advaita Acharya is one of his principal associates, whom we are glorifying today. And as it is explained in the verses which we read by Swarup Damodar Goswami, Advaita Acharya is Vishnu Tattva, he is Ishvara himself, and he is a very particular incarnation of Lord Mahavishnu in his capacity of presiding deity of Maya. As we know, the Lord in any of his incarnations has his energy together with him. There is a male principle and female principle. Male principle is the Lord himself, and female principle is his energy. So Advaita Acharya is a very particular incarnation of the Lord Mahavishnu in his capacity of Upadana Karana. While analyzing the material creation, this creation, our acharyas, they say that there are two causes, two causes for this material creation. One is nimitta karana, which is remote cause or instrumental cause. And another one is upadana karana, which is material cause. To create this world, you need nimitta karana or instrumental cause. You need somebody who desires to create, who knows how to create, who knows the design of this creation, and who wants to create this. All this are nimitta karana. And but you need also the material from which you create this universe. So the Lord himself is both nimitta karana and upadana karana of this world. That's a very important part of our philosophy, to understand that the Lord himself not only nimitta karana, but also upadana karana. Like in the philosophy of Acharya, whom we follow, of course, but we have some different understandings sometimes on different points. And Madhvacharya, he agrees that the Lord is nimitta karana, but he doesn't agree that the Lord is upadana karana. He says matter is upadana karana. But ultimately we say, what is matter? Matter is the manifestation, is the energy of the Lord. The Lord himself is upadana karana. So when the Lord himself becomes, what is nimitta karana? Nimitta karana, the energy of nimitta karana. The Lord Mahavishnu, when he creates this world, the energy of nimitta karana is jiva maya, the living entities. That's the energy of Mahavishnu creating this world, the living entities, jiva maya. And when the Lord himself becomes upadana karana of this world, then his energy is this maya or the matter. So Advaita Acharya is the manifestation of this upadana karana Lord, who is the presiding deity of Maya, of the material energy of the Lord. And therefore, sometimes it is said that he is Sadashiva himself. Actually, there is no difference between Mahavishnu and Sadashiva, because Sadashiva is Vishnu Tattva. Sadashiva becomes Shambhu, and he directly associates with Maya. And through the union of Shambhu and Maya, this material world is created. But before that, Sadashiva, who is Vishnu Tattva himself, he is not directly in contact with Maya. He is transcendental, and his expansion as Shambhu contacts directly with Maya. But ultimately, Advaita Acharya is this transcendental incarnation of the Lord, who is the presiding deity of this material energy, of this Maya. And therefore it is said that sometimes he is called as Shiva himself, or Rudra even, when he would manifest his angry form, or when he was roaring to call Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sometimes he was called Rudra, because Rudra is somebody who is calling very loudly. He was doing these humkars, and this is also nature of Rudra, to do this hum, this very loud roars. Anyway, that's the tattva. We should understand this is the tattva, and then we should understand how this tattva manifests through his lila. And because when the Lord himself, especially when he comes to Kali Yuga, to the people of Kali Yuga, he hides his identity very strongly. But every now and then his identity surfaces from, and he shows his identity in his lila. So Sri Advaita Acharya, he was born in East Bengal, in Bangladesh, nowadays Bangladesh, near Sylhet. And his father was Kuvera Pandit, and his mother was Nabi Devi. And his father was a very great Pandit, and he was the court Pandit of the king, Divya Singha. And Advaita Acharya was born 53 years before Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu left this world, Advaita Acharya had the ripe age of 101 year. And despite of this age, every time when devotees would come from Navadvip to Jagannath Puri, he would walk all this distance in his age of 100 years. He lived in this world for 125 years. So he lived 25 years after the disappearance of Lord Chaitanya. So for a long time, he was living in this world. But when he was just a small boy, when he was born to Kuvera Pandit was very happy when the small boy was born, and all the neighbors who saw little boy, they said, what kind of pious activities this person committed in his previous life, that such a boy would be born to him. So he was a very unusual boy, and when he was a boy of 5 years old, Kuvera Pandit, who was the priest and the spiritual master of Maharaja Divya Singha, took this little boy to the court of the king. And the king was in the temple at that time, and the king was worshipper of Shakti, of Durga. And he had this deity of Durga. And Kuvera Pandit came to this temple with his son, and he bowed down to Durga, and Maharaja Divya Singha, of course, was the worshipper of Durga. And the only one who didn't bow down to Durga was little Kamalaksha. When the Advaita Acharya was born, his name was Kamalaksha. So, or Panchanana, Kama Panchanana. So this, when the king saw that the boy didn't bow down to his worshipable deity, the king became very angry. And he said, what kind of son you have? This son is very badly trained. You know, you should train your son that he should worship to my deity, to Durga. And then Kuvera Pandit very innocently approached his son and said, like, you know, sometimes parents of devotees say, Dandavat, 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 you know, and push their children, you do Dandavat, and children don't want to do it. So in the same way, Kuvera Pandit, he approached his little son and said, Dandavat, Dandavat, Dandavat. And all of a sudden, this little son started speaking in a very learned language. He said, I can do Dandavat. There's no problem for me to do Dandavat. But it will be very inauspicious if I do it. So it will be very amangal. It is said here that Advaita Acharya is mangal, so he is about to display very auspicious lila doing this. And Kuvera Pandit was struck with wonder. How is it the son is speaking this? And the king became even more surprised. He said, why it is so amangal if you bow down to the deity? It's very auspicious if you bow down to the deity. You're supposed to do it. And little Kamalaksha, he said, I made a warning. You do whatever you like with this warning, but I told you that that something very inauspicious will happen if I bow down to this deity. But if you want me to bow down to this deity, I will bow down to this deity. And very humbly, he made the Dandavat to this deity, and at that moment, the deity of Durga burst. And the goddess Durga left this deity in disgust. That her master, Shiva, Sadashiva, is bowing down to her. She couldn't tolerate this. Therefore, she left the deity, and everyone was watching into this, broken deity. And little Kamalakshi, he got up and said, I told you that something inauspicious will happen. You didn't listen to me, so this is what happened. And at that moment, all the people, they thought, oh, this boy, he's very special. Maybe he's God himself. But then he became, again, a little boy, and very innocently he displayed his childish pastimes. So when he was just a few years after that, a couple of years after that, his father moved to Sylhet, and when he was 12 years old, his father and his mother moved to Navadvip, because at that time, or to Shantipur, because at that time Navadvip and Shantipur were very famous. They were university cities. And after some time, after moving to this, there are some pastimes in the meantime, but we don't have much time to describe them. When they moved to Shantipur, after some time, they passed away. Both mother and father of Advaita Acharya passed away. And Advaita Acharya, he was young youth at that time. He was 25 years old when that happened. He took this opportunity. He didn't want to get married at that time. Actually, he married in a very ripe age. He was more than 60 years old when he married. Before that, he was too busy. His first son was born when he was 70 years old, Achyutananda. So when he was 25 years old, he was already very learned, and he was already awarded a title of Acharya, and it would be right time for him to start his career as a professor, as would be natural for him. At that time, he was from very educated and very noble Brahmana lineage, but he didn't start his profession as a teacher at that time. At that time, what he did, he went on pilgrimage on the pretext of doing Shraddha ceremony for his father and his mother. He went to Gaya, and he spent some time in Gaya, and then he said, since I already went such a long way, I should do the pilgrimage all over the holy places in India. And he made his tour, and he visited all the holy places. He went south to Rameswaram, he went west to Dwaraka, he went north to Badarikashram. So he basically went through all the holy places in India. And while coming, and then he went to Vrindavan. Ultimately, that was his last destination. After going through all the holy places, he went to Vrindavan. And when he came to Vrindavan, his real mission started becoming more and more clear. He was rolling in the dust of Vrindavan, and he was crying and saying, "Oh Krishna, oh Lord of my life, please manifest yourself." And once he was in Nandagram, and he was crying and crying and crying and saying, "Oh my Lord, so many years passed while you were here, and I don't see you. Please, please, manifest yourself in front of me. I want to see you. I want to see your form. I want to worship your form." And at that night, while Advaita Acharya was asleep, Lord Krishna came to his dream. And he said, "I'm laying down in the ground near Dvadashaditya Tila in Vrindavan. And this is the deity to whom Kubja was worshipping. When Krishna went to Mathura, he had some little affair with a hunchback woman in Mathura. And gopis will become really upset with him. They said, he left us, and he's doing this mischief with this hunchback woman. What's wrong with him? He left us, the most beautiful and young woman in the creation, and he is engaged with this strange lady who doesn't even love him so properly. So when Krishna actually purified her and rectified her from all her impurities, for the rest of her life, Kubja was worshipping this deity of Krishna as a cowherd boy playing his flute. So answering the call, and actually it is said that there are different explanations of our acharyas, who is this Kubja. And one of the explanations is that Kubja is the earth, is the planet Earth. So therefore, Advaita Acharya, being the presiding deity of this material energy, it's only appropriate that he would be worshipping the deity to whom Kubja was worshipping. So Lord himself came in a dream to Advaita Acharya and said, if you go to this place, you will find me there laying in the ground. Please excavate me from the ground and install me in the temple in Vrindavan. So Advaita Acharya came with all the villagers. He came to this Vadashaditya Tila near the place where Madan Mohan Mandir is there. Still the banyan tree is there under which this deity was found by Advaita Acharya. And Advaita Acharya started excavating, and very soon they saw this beautiful deity of Madan Mohan as we know him today. But at that time, there was no name for this deity. Krishna didn't reveal his name initially. He said, this is the deity to whom Kubja was worshipping, so install me in the temple. Advaita Acharya took the deity from the earth, made the proper abhishek, and everyone very joyfully performed this pastime. And he appointed some brahmanas to worship this deity. But when this happened, there were some envious people who wanted to make some apparat to the deity. Probably some people infected by Muslim mentality who didn't like the deity worship and everything. So they made a plot among themselves. They decided that they will come to the temple at one point together when nobody is there, and they will attack the deity. And they will try to demolish this deity. So, of course, this is the pastime which is arranged by the Lord himself. Through this pastime, the Lord himself wanted to reveal his real name to Advaita Acharya. So what happened at that time, when these people, they came to the temple and nobody was there. The priest, after puja, he left the temple and nobody was there. So these people with weapons in their hands came to the temple and they wanted to destroy the deity. And Lord Krishna himself, he pretended that he is afraid of these people, and he hid himself under the flowers. There was a lot of flowers, so he hid himself there. And they came to the temple, and they wanted to destroy the deity, but they didn't see anyone on the altar. Nobody was there, and they were searching and searching and searching, and Krishna was trembling in the flowers. And ultimately they left. And after that, a few minutes after that, the Brahmana priest who was taking care of this deity, appointed by Advaita Acharya, he came to the temple. And he didn't see the deity either. He couldn't find him. And he started lamenting, and he said, probably I did some apparat to him, that's why he left. I'm such a bad brahmana, I didn't worship him properly. He was crying there, and he was rolling in the floor of the temple. Where is the deity? Where did he left? Where did he leave? And then he came to Advaita Acharya and said, Prabhu, look what happened. I did some apparat, you should make some punishment to me. Lord left the temple, he's not in the altar anymore. So Advaita Acharya, he became very morose, and he came to the temple and he started crying. And he said to this priest, the Lord came on his own accord. And then he left. What can you do? He is independent Lord. He came on his own, and now he left, and God knows where he is, and he started lamenting and saying, oh my dear Lord, why did you do this to me? For a long time I was praying for you to manifest. You manifested yourself, and now you disappeared again. What happened with you? And this night, the Lord himself again came to Advaita Acharya, and he said, don't worry, I'm here. But I wanted to reveal to you my name, my real name. Please now reinstall me on this altar. I'm there hiding in the flowers, there in the temple, or nearby in the garden. I'm hiding there. Reinstall me, and from now on, call me Madan Gopal, because all the people who will see me will become crazy. This is my real name. I'm Gopal who makes everyone crazy. So my name is Madan Gopal. Install me and call me this name, and I will be very happily accepting the worship from you and from these pujaris, and whoever will come and see me will go crazy. So that's the Lord himself is revealing the purpose of the incarnation of Advaita Acharya. Why it is Advaita Acharya who revealed, or who gave this deity to the whole world? Because Advaita Acharya wanted to make everyone crazy with the love of Godhead. He wanted to propagate this emotional, completely overwhelming love of Godhead to everyone, and therefore Lord himself came to Advaita Acharya in this form of Madan Gopal and said, this is what you want, this is what I will do on your behalf. Whoever comes to me, whoever sees me will become crazy, and you will become happy by seeing them becoming crazy. So that's the craziness parampara which we belong to, which we proudly belong to. So we ultimately want to become crazy. When Srila Prabhupada started his movement, all these deprogrammers, they started saying that whoever joins this movement, he becomes crazy. And Prabhupada says, yes, that's true. This is the purpose. This is what we want to do. We ultimately want, but it takes some time before you really become crazy. In the beginning, you become a little crazy. You start putting tilak and wearing these strange clothes and going to the street. It's not the full extent of craziness expected from you. Actually, Lord Chaitanya expects much more craziness from you. So if your parents will tell you, you become crazy, you said, no, it's only beginning. Don't worry too much now. It's only beginning. So anyways, this is how Madan Gopal appeared there. And when Advaita Acharya saw this, he became very happy, saw this dream, and he came to the temple and he found Madan Gopal, he put him back to the altar and he started dancing and dancing and dancing. For 2 hours he was dancing without stop and chanting in complete craziness. And then after this, when he was completely, totally exhausted, he found the priest. And he said, go do puja. Why are you not doing puja? You're supposed to do puja. Puja should be very punctual in time. Why are you not in the temple? And the priest said, why are you joking with me? My Lord is not there. He left. He doesn't want my puja. He said, no, he is there. He is back there. He left and then he came back. Don't worry. So then the priest came and he saw again Madan Gopal. And he said, from now on you worship this Lord and his name will be Madan Gopal from this. And don't ask me why. You will understand it yourself later. So this is how Madan Gopal made his appearance. And when Srimati Radharani was installed near him, next to him, by the desire of Maharaja Purushottama Jana, son of Maharaja Prataparudra, then he became known as Madan Mohan. Before that, he was known, when he was alone, he was known as Madan Gopal. So that's the deity, the first deity of Vrindavan, which was found by Advaita Acharya. For so long time, Advaita Acharya was living till what time I should finish class? No limit. We can go crazy. According to our tradition. Anyway, I'll try to contain myself. When for a long time Advaita Acharya spent in Vrindavan, and then he had this desire to go back to Shantipur, to Navadvip, because in his meditation it has become clear that the Lord will appear in Navadvip. And the real mission of Advaita Acharya is there in Bengal, in West Bengal, and therefore he decided to go to Navadvip, and he wanted to take Madan Gopal with him. He became so attached to this deity, and he was ready to take him, and Madan Gopal came in his dream and he said, no, don't take me away from Vrindavan. I don't want to be away from Vrindavan. I only want to stay here. And Advaita Acharya started arguing with him. What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to leave you here? And how will I live without you? And he said, no. You go to Nidivan and you search in Nidivan. And in Nidivan, if you search properly, you will find a very special picture of myself. This picture was painted by Vishakha herself. On the request of Srimati Radharani, when Srimati Radharani was experiencing separation with the Lord, Vishakha, to pacify Srimati Radharani, made a picture of Krishna. And this picture is not different from me. So you find this picture in Nidivan. Take this picture with you to Bengal and worship this picture. This picture is still there in Shantipur, in the house of Advaita Acharya. So Advaita Acharya went to Nidivan and he found this picture which was painted by Vishakha Devi. And he took his picture and he, crying, he left Madan Gopal. Yeah, actually Madan Gopal said that I want to be... Initially, I was worshipped in Mathura, so I still want to be worshipped in Mathura. And there is one Brahman, his name is Chaubi. He will come. And when he will come to you, you please give me to him, and then you can go back to Bengal and continue your devotional service to me. So the next day, this Chaubi came to Advaita Acharya, and he was very embarrassed. This Brahman from Mathura, Chaubi, it means Chaturvedi. It's a corrupted name of Chaturvedi. Very learned Brahmin came to Mathura, and he said, from Mathura to Vrindavan, to the temple of Madan Gopal. And he found Advaita Acharya, and he said, I'm really embarrassed, but I have to tell you that Madan Gopal came to me in a dream. And he said that I should take him from you to Mathura. And Advaita Acharya, he smiled, he said, he also came to me in a dream. And he said to me the same, so don't be embarrassed. You know, please imagine somebody comes here and said, Lord Jagannath came to me in a dream, please give me Lord Jagannath, I go home. So, probably it would not be so easy to do it, but Advaita Acharya, he easily did it because he came to him in a dream. So he gave Madan Gopal to this Brahman Chaubi, and Brahman Chaubi, he adopted this Madan Gopal as his son. He had another son, and he was worshipping him as his son, especially actually Madan Gopal wanted to enjoy the motherly love, Vatsalya Rasa of the wife of this Brahmana. So that's the story of Madan Gopal, the deity of Advaita Acharya. And Advaita Acharya went back to Mayapur, to Shantipur and to Navadvip. And he settled there, he became a professor. And because he was so learned, he had many, many disciples. And because he had many, many disciples, he became very rich. It's an old tradition. If you have many disciples, you become very rich. So he established two houses, one house in two schools. He was teaching in both schools. He became very famous professor with many, many followers. And in Shantipur and in Navadvip, he had two houses, and he got married very late in his life, was many, many years passed before he got married. And he married with two wives. He was looking at the society, and so many people were interested in Vyakarana. So many people were interested in logic and Tarka. So many people were interested in Jyotish. So many people were interested in all these secondary disciplines, but nobody was interested in Bhakti. Very few were interested in Bhakti. When he would teach people Vyakarana, students would flock to him. Hundreds and hundreds of students would come to listen to his lecture on Vyakarana. And he became disgusted. And he started teaching them Bhagavad Gita, and nobody came. They came for Bhagavad Gita class, and then they saw that it's not relevant. And he started teaching Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, as it said here, and only few people would come. And of course, he was already rich by that time, so he was not in need of too many disciples, but he actually gave up teaching Vyakarana. He gave up teaching logic and everything else, and he was only teaching Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, as it is said here in this verse which we read. Because he wanted to teach people Bhakti, but nobody was interested in Bhakti. And we all know, people, if you teach something, if you teach Jyotisha, so many people will come. If you teach Ayurveda, so many people will come. If you teach Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavad Gita, yeah, Bhagavad Gita, very nice, Bhagavad Gita, very nice. But what will I do with it? It's not so practical in the minds of people, even though it's the most practical thing, it's the most practical science. If you understand Bhagavad Gita properly, and if you build your life on the foundation of Bhagavad Gita, on teachings of Bhagavad Gita, you become happy. What else do you need? You don't need anything else. If you really understand Bhagavad Gita, that's the most practical. But people don't think it's practical, and therefore they prefer something more practical, quote unquote. Therefore, they are more into some other secondary branches. And Advaita Acharya was so sad. He was so extremely sad because of this. And he saw how people behave themselves, how they are being very rich. Navadvip at that time was very rich city because, people would come from all over India to study under the Pandits of Navadvip, to become priests. And people were doing all kinds of nonsense. They would spend so much time in mundane affairs and the marriages of their sons and daughters. Actually, there is one more very important episode of the life of Advaita Acharya, which I forget to tell. After Vrindavan, when he was on the way back to Navadvip, Advaita Acharya stayed for some time in Mithila. He was passing by Bihar. And in Mithila, he saw a very old man. In Mithila, he was once passing Mithila, and he heard a very beautiful song. And this song touched his heart so much. And attracted by the voice of the person who was singing this song, he came and he saw an old man. And even though he was very old man, he was singing in a beautiful Gandharva-like voice. And he was sitting under banyan tree and playing some musical instrument, and he was crying at the same time. So Advaita Acharya, mesmerized by this song and by the vision which he had, he sat down and he listened. For a long time he was listening, and this person, he was singing songs. Sometimes he was crying himself, sometimes he was laughing. And then when he stopped singing, Advaita Acharya asked, "Who are you? What gave you this ability to sing in such a beautiful way? And the verses of these songs are so beautiful. I never heard such songs. Who are you?" And he became very sad. This person became very sad. And he said, I'm the court pandit of the local king. And because I'm maintained by the king, my heart is polluted. And because my heart is so polluted, sometimes I ran away from the king, and I sat down under this tree, and I start lamenting about my fate. And I'm doing this, and somehow or other spontaneously, these songs come from my heart. And sometimes I sing some other songs because Krishna within my heart pleased with me, being pleased with me gives me these moods. And I'm composing this song, and my name is Vidyapati. So he met with this famous Mithila poet, Vidyapati. And actually the song which Advaita Acharya heard from Vidyapati was a beautiful song which Prabhupada often quoted. This song is describing the plot or the fate of people in this world. And in this song, Vidyapati, in a very, with a lot of feelings, he says that this world is like desert. There is a blazing sun which is, shining very brightly, and there is a lot of heat in this desert. And people are suffering in this desert. And sometimes, very rarely, there is one drop of water which comes to this desert. And because it's blazing sun and it is desert, this one drop of water evaporates very quickly. Like in a frying pan, if the frying pan is in the fire and you drop one drop of water, nothing. So he said, that in this song that the happiness which people experience in this world is like this one drop in the desert. It just for a split second, there is an illusion that there is a happiness. And he says, what is this happiness? This is the happiness of associating with one's wife, and the happiness of associating with one's children, and the happiness of being in the society, samaj, sutta, patni. All this happiness is available here, but it's like one drop. And people are, despite this very meager experience which they have, despite this, they're so mad after this happiness. And they said, oh, yeah, I had this happiness, this drop, give me one more drop, and one more drop. And in this way, life after life, life after life, life after life, they uselessly spent in this pursuit of mundane happiness. So when Advaita Acharya heard this song, he was so touched by this song, he started crying himself. Seeing this scene as Vidyapati was crying, he started crying. And this song actually touched the heart of Advaita Acharya so much. And he said, you're right. This whole world is suffering. I went through all the India, and the only thing which I saw was suffering of people. How they're suffering, being forgetful of the Lord and not really worshipping Him properly from the heart. Not loving, not being attached to the Lord. This is what it is. So when Advaita Acharya came back to Navadvip, this song was reverberating in his ears again and again and again. Again and again and again he was singing this song. And when he saw the condition of the people in Navadvip, at one point he became so morose, and he said, I cannot do anything. I cannot do anything with these people. I cannot help these people. I'm trying. I'm preaching Bhagavad Gita. I'm preaching Srimad Bhagavatam. But nobody wants to listen. Nobody wants to follow. Everyone wants to chase after this so-called happiness of this world. I cannot do anything. So this Kali Yuga is totally hopeless. Unless the Lord Himself comes, nothing will happen. So I will make the Lord come here, or if I don't do this, I will destroy this world, no problem. I will just do my Tandava Nritya, I will just dance a little bit here and there, no problem. This whole world will be destroyed. What is the use of this world? I created this world. I created this world from my energy. So, and it's useless. I created this world for one purpose, for people to become lovers of God, for people to develop attachment to the Supreme Lord, to the holy name of the Lord, and nobody is attached. So what is the use? I will destroy this world and go happily back home, back to Godhead. So that was Advaita Acharya's determination, and that's why while reading a verse from Tantra, he started worshipping Shalagram Shila. Actually, he went to Nepal in his pilgrimage as well, to Kaligandaki river, and there he found this beautiful Shalagram. So he was worshipping this Shalagram, which he personally brought from Nepal, with Ganga water and Tulasi leaves, offering them, and making very loud sound and calling the Lord, please come, please come, please come, please come. Unless you come, nothing good will happen in this world. So that's how Advaita Acharya started his prayers to the Supreme Lord. That's why he started these prayers to the Supreme Lord. And that's why he is glorified as Advaita Acharya. Being the incarnation of the Supreme Lord Himself, He is Advaita. But because his most ardent desire within his heart is to teach people Bhakti, he is Acharya, as explained in these verses. He is Acharya because he wants people to be happy. And he is teaching himself how people can become happy by glorifying the Supreme Lord, by chanting the holy name, and by associating with devotees. So that's why he is Acharya. He is non-different from the Supreme Lord, but he is teaching what we're supposed to do. And therefore he is coming in the mood of the servant of the Supreme Lord and teaching us what it means to be Bhakta. And one essential teaching of this is that to be Bhakta means to teach others how to become Bhaktas. Bhaktas by nature are preachers. Bhakti by nature, because we want to share the bhakti or the happiness which we have within our heart. We want to share it. You know, if you say that you have bhakti and you don't preach, you don't have bhakti. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, he was strongly advocating this principle. He said, if you have some life, you have to preach. If you have some little bhakti, some drop of realization, you have to preach. Preaching is the natural manifestation of bhakti. And if you don't preach, it means what? It means you don't have bhakti. That's it. As much bhakti as you have, the desire to share it with others will be there. And if there is no desire to share it with others, it means that there is no bhakti. There is no experience. There is no real connection with the Supreme Lord. You're chanting, but it's kind of useless thing. So that's why Advaita Acharya is Acharya. He's teaching us. And here he is overwhelmed with this desire. The Lord himself has to come, because otherwise this whole world is going to hell. And the Lord himself, he listened to Advaita Acharya, to his plea, and he came. But for many years, for 23 or 22 years, he was hidden. He didn't manifest himself. I will tell just a couple of more pastimes of Advaita Acharya to glorify him a little bit on this day. First, I wanted to tell how Advaita Acharya tested the Supreme Lord. He wanted to, and that's again a very important teaching of Advaita Acharya. Few lessons already we learned. The first lesson Advaita Acharya taught us when he was 5 years old, when he refused to worship anyone else besides his worshipable deity. That's a very important lesson which we have to understand. We have to worship one deity. And if we have Ishta Devata, we have to worship this deity. Another important lesson he taught us when he was not just doing pilgrimage to Vrindavan, but was sincerely within his heart praying to the Lord, please manifest yourself in front of me. I want to worship you in a concrete form. The desire to worship ultimately has to manifest in our desire to worship the deity form of the Lord. It's a very important part of our tradition. We should definitely chant the holy name, but we also have to have the desire to do something for the Lord in his deity form. And another lesson is this lesson of compassion. When Advaita Acharya heard this song of Vidyapati, he became so overwhelmed and swayed by this song. And he became a preacher at that point. We may not have compassion ourselves, but when we hear about the compassion of Srila Prabhupada, we should be infected by this compassion. As much as Advaita Acharya was infected by the compassion of Vidyapati, he kind of reflected the same mood in the heart. The heart has this reflective potency, and if we see very strong feelings in other people, we should somehow or other reflect the same feeling in our heart. That's how parampara goes. Srila Prabhupada came and he explained to us what bhakti means. And bhakti means, integral part of bhakti is compassion. How to obtain compassion? Just by hearing about Prabhupada's compassion. Taking his compassion deep to our heart, reflecting his compassion within our heart, and trying to follow his footsteps. And then another very important lesson is that Advaita Acharya was living in Shantipur with his wife Sita Devi and another wife Sri Devi, and he was there, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came back from Gaya, and in Gaya he had this complete change of heart. He got initiation from Ishvara Puri. And when he came back, he was totally transformed. And after some time, devotees became very happy, and they started thinking about in the heart, what happened with Nimai Pandit? How all of a sudden he became such a great devotee? Maybe he's not just a great devotee, maybe he's somebody else, something more significant. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he displayed a pastime of meeting with Nityananda Prabhu. In his divine revelation, he said that divine personality will come, and he is Balaram himself. And he met with, he found Nityananda Prabhu in Nandanacharya's house, embraced him. And devotees more and more, they were becoming more and more excited about the personality of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There is some intuition in them that he is more than just a bhakta. He is the Lord himself who came with this mission to propagate bhakti. So what happened, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at one point, he said, tomorrow we will celebrate Nityananda Prabhu as the original spiritual master. We will celebrate Guru Puja for Nityananda Prabhu, because he is the incarnation of Lord Balaram, and he is my elder brother. So it's a very, not very covered hint which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave about his identity. He is the incarnation of Balaram, and he is my elder brother. So that's what he said about Nityananda Prabhu. And he specifically said, please call Advaita Acharya, because Advaita Acharya was the leader of all the Vaishnavas in Navadvip for a long time. And still, despite this Sankirtana movement has already been started by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Kirtan started, Advaita Acharya didn't come yet. So Srivas Pandit, who became one of the first devotees who actually recognized that Lord Chaitanya is God himself, because Lord Chaitanya came to his temple and said, in his altar, and said, please worship me, Srivas Pandit. So again, quite revealing. So, because Srivas Pandit was very much afraid of the Muslim kings, and he was worshipping his Nrisimha deity, and Lord Chaitanya started banging in his door and said, Srivas, why you so afraid? Just worship me and your fear will vanish. Srivas Pandit, he started worshipping, and all his fears vanished when he was worshipping Lord Chaitanya. And Lord Chaitanya said to Ramai Pandit, brother of Srivas Pandit, you go to Shantipur and you get Advaita Acharya here. And Advaita Acharya is about to give us very important lesson. You know, he has heard all these rumors. He has heard what happened with Nimai Pandit. For a long time, he was also very enchanted by Nimai Pandit, because Nimai Pandit used to come to his classes when he was a young boy, when Advaita Acharya was giving classes, and Vishwarup used to visit his classes and listen to his lectures. And Nimai Pandit, little Nimai, would come to him and call Vishwambar back to home. And Advaita Acharya was enchanted. But still, despite of this, and he heard all these rumors, he heard that Srivas Pandit, who was a very sober Pandit, became follower of Lord Chaitanya, who was much younger than Srivas Pandit and everyone. And he had this intuition. And now Ramai Pandit has come to him. And he said, you come to Navadvip. Chaitanya, at that time he was not Chaitanya. Nimai Pandit is calling you, and Nimai Pandit is God himself. He revealed it. He is going to reveal it tomorrow. And Advaita Acharya said, yes, very nice, very nice. Let him reveal it to me. He was not so easily swayed. It's a very important lesson. He wanted to test Lord Chaitanya. He took all the presents to him. He took his wife Sita Devi on a palanquin with all his entourage. He came to Navadvip, but he didn't go to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He said, if he wants me to visit him, let him find out where I am now. And he hid himself in the same house of Nandanacharya, because it's a tradition. It was a place where everyone was hiding from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he already knew where they're going to be hidden. So he was waiting there. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and all the devotees, they were celebrating Vyasa Puja of Nityananda Prabhu. And all of a sudden, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, oh, Advaita Acharya is here. But somehow or other, he's not coming here. Let's come to him. He is the Lord himself. Let's go to him. And all the devotees with Kirtan procession and with Nityananda Prabhu came to Nandanacharya house. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he said to Advaita Acharya, why you're hiding here? You're the Lord himself. Please come. And Advaita Acharya started dancing and glorifying Lord Chaitanya. And he was convinced that he is the Lord himself. Anyway, so I can go on telling the pastimes of Advaita Acharya, but that's another lesson, important lesson, that we should, we may believe in something, but at the same time, we should not believe in something at the expense of our intelligence. And we should test our belief by this kasoti stone of our intelligence. The intelligence is like this testing stone for the gold. If you want to know, the real gold, there is a special stone by which you can find out if it's gold or not. So in the same way, we should believe in God. But the intelligence is given to us so that we could really test our beliefs. And therefore Prabhupada came and he gave his books and he gave all the logics and all the proofs why we should worship Lord Chaitanya, why we should worship Advaita Acharya, why we should worship Nityananda Prabhu, how we should worship them, and what is the benefit of worshiping them. So again, on this day, on this glorious day of Advaita Saptami, we should try to meditate on all these pastimes of Advaita Acharya, how many beautiful pastimes, how Advaita Acharya, how once Lord Chaitanya said that I will not give love of Godhead to my mother because she had offended Advaita Acharya. Even though she didn't offend Advaita Acharya by saying this, she just thought in her mind. He's called Advaita, but actually he should be called Dvaita because he is duplicitous. He deprived me of one son, and now he's doing the same with me, And how Advaita Acharya, when he heard this, he became ecstatic and lost his consciousness. And he said, Shachi Devi, she's such a great devotee. This very important lessons which Advaita Acharya teaching us by this pastime. First of all, just a thought was offensive. And that was enough for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to become very angry with his mother. She didn't say anything. What to speak when we say something blasphemous against the devotees. She was just thinking bad about Advaita Acharya. That's how important we should think, even in our thoughts. We should be only glorifying devotees. We should never try to offend them. Even though she had a reason, because, she lost her son because of the preaching of Advaita Acharya. But we really have to understand what devotee means and what devotion means. That's another lesson. Another lesson is that Advaita Acharya didn't like that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was respecting him and treating him as a senior, and Advaita Acharya to show who he is in comparison with Lord Chaitanya, he started preaching Mayavad philosophy, Yoga Vasishta. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became so angry, and he just pulled down this, from Vyasasana, pulled down Advaita Acharya and started beating him. And Sita Thakurani became very afraid and said, "What are you doing to this old man?" Advaita Acharya was almost 80 years old at that time. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was 23 years old, young and very strong, and he was pulling him and, by the hairs and beating him. And Sita Thakurani was running and crying and saying, this old man will die, he will die. And Advaita Acharya himself was laughing, very good, I got such a good punishment. And his little son, Achyutananda, at that time, he was also laughing, and he said, very good. Because this is what Advaita, Lord Chaitanya is teaching us, that we should follow the social etiquette. If somebody is more elder, we should worship him. Especially Advaita Acharya, he is the disciple of Madhavendra Puri, he is his Guru Varga. But Advaita Acharya is teaching us much more important lesson. He's teaching us that we should actually worship those who have more bhakti, despite of all these social conventions, whether they are younger by age or they are, maybe even less knowledgeable, but have more bhakti. He wants to teach the whole world by this pastime. Very good. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is my worshipable Lord. So many important pastimes are there. And ultimately it was Advaita Acharya, he was the one who called Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to this world. And many times Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was complaining, I was peacefully sleeping in the milk ocean, and then I was woken up by these loud cries of this madman, of this Advaita, and that's why I came here. And now he's teaching Yoga Vasishta. What's happening? How he's doing this? He's betraying me. I came, and now he's teaching Mayavad. So it was Advaita Acharya. So we are in this mission of mad people. Advaita Acharya is one madman. He is the follower of another madman. And ultimately, the perfection of our life is that if by following their footsteps also become mad. And we can only become mad if we have mercy of all these madmen. There is no other way to become mad. Somehow or other we should get some mercy of these mad people and also become mad and totally happy and oblivious of all these sufferings of this world. But in the meantime, we should try to also make other people mad. So that's how the parampara goes on. When Haridas Thakur and Nityananda Prabhu were sent by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to his first preaching mission. Actually, it was Advaita Acharya himself who asked Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to come out from the house of Srivas Pandit. For 1 year, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was doing kirtans inside the doors, behind the closed doors, and then it was by the request of Advaita Acharya, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came with all his associates and started doing Harinam parties in Navadvip city. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for the first time sent for the preaching expedition Haridas Thakur and Nityananda Prabhu, and they encountered Jagai and Madai, Haridas Thakur came back from this. When Haridas Thakur was running for his life and Jagai and Madai were running behind him, and only because they were so drunk they couldn't catch him. So Haridas Thakur came back to Advaita's house and he started complaining. He said, this Nityananda, he's totally crazy. Somehow or other, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked me to accompany this madman, and this madman, he met two drunkards, and these drunkards, they almost killed me. And when by running behind myself, and when Advaita Acharya heard this complaint, he said very important thing. Please listen, very important thing. He said, there is not one madman. Very soon there will be 4 madmen. And these 4 madmen will dance together on the streets of Navadvip. So Haridas Thakur was complaining about the madness of Nityananda Prabhu, and Advaita Acharya looked at him and said, "You're also mad. And this Jagai and Madai, they will also become mad. And all 4 of you, by embracing each other, will dance in the streets of Navadvip." Because Nityananda Prabhu wants to give his mercy to Jagai and Madai. And it means that Jagai and Madai will also become mad, and you also mad. It's known long ago. So don't worry. Very soon these drunkards will become harmless madmen, and you will dance together. So that's the madness parampara which we belong to, and I wish you happy Advaita Saptami and happy becoming mad. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. 3 questions, okay?
Question by Sarvatma Rishikesh Prabhu. Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you very much for the amazing class. What is the recommendation of Srila Prabhupada with respect to worship of Shaligram Shila for Grihasthas? Was just curious, did Advaita Acharya continue to worship and pray to the Lord to incarnate and come down even after Lord Chaitanya's appearance? Or he knew that Lord Chaitanya was indeed the Supreme Personality of Godhead?
It's a tradition that all the Grihasthas should worship, Brahman initiated Grihasthas should worship Shalagram Shila. And Prabhupada instituted Shalagram Shila worship in our society, and it's definitely important to worship Shalagram Shila. And many Grihasthas have Shalagram Shila. And Advaita Acharya, there was Shalagram Shila. It was Shalagram Shila who would be offered prasadam, who would be offered bhoga, and who would be offered abhishek every day. So Shalagram Shila is important. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was worshipping Shalagram Shila himself. And as far as I know, Advaita Acharya continued worshipping Shalagram Shila, which he found in Kaligandaki river. And this Shalagram Shila is still there in Shantipur. And it's being worshipped. This tradition is still there. And we see all our acharyas, they were worshipping Shalagram Shila, like Gopal Bhatta Goswami, one of Shalagram Shila became Radharaman. So,
Second part, whether Advaita Acharya knew Lord Chaitanya's appearance after, or he was just acting.
he only knew about the identity of Lord Chaitanya when Lord Chaitanya himself revealed his identity to everyone and invited him. I explained this episode, when Lord Chaitanya revealed his identity.
Question is Srivas Krishna Chaitanya Guru. Namaskar Maharaj, these offensive tendencies deep-rooted. Can you please suggest some ways to remove these tendencies from our heart?
I suggested this way. Just by glorifying devotees, we can get rid of this. By glorifying devotees and experiencing bliss of glorification. Because it is a perverted way to experience some happiness or some enjoyment by offending somebody. Like somebody there is not 5 rasas, there is 6 rasas. One is Shanta rasa, then Sakya rasa, Dasya rasa, Sakya rasa, Vatsalya rasa, Madhurya rasa, and there is Ninda rasa. The special rasa. When you offend somebody, there is a special relationship, Ninda rasa. So, there is only one way to get rid of this tendency, is to experience rasa of glorification. If you glorify the devotee and experience the bliss, and happiness from this glorification, then you can get rid of this tendency.
Question from Chaitanya Das. Hare Krishna Devakumar Maharaj, Bhakti with perfect knowledge seems correct. However, because of lack of intelligence, most of the time I am just trying to practice Bhakti without knowledge. Will this type of progress in this path kindly explain?
If we're practicing the direct angas of bhakti, they don't require knowledge. Svarupa Shakti is there in the angas, in direct angas of bhakti. And Svarupa Shakti means Vastu Shakti. The fire burns whether you know that the fire burns or not. It doesn't matter. The fire will burn you, if you put your hand into fire. In the same way, if we are hearing about the Lord, if we are chanting His holy name, whether we have knowledge or not, it will affect us, no doubt. But if we want to be really absorbed in bhakti, the knowledge is required for this. Faith is required for this. Without knowledge, the practice of bhakti will lack required absorption. And we know, if there is knowledge and understanding that this is something very important, then the absorption is deeper. So without absorption, we can be casually engaged in bhakti, and it will have an effect, but the effect will not be as strong as possible, as it could be. So that's the difference. Okay, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Sri Advaita Acharya Virbhav Mahotsava ki jai, Gaura Premanande.